Autopsies are set for today on the bodies of Nicole Simpson and her acquaintance Ron Goldman. O.J., meantime, remains here in seclusion at his home. His lawyer says he is devastated by what has happened, and he had absolutely nothing to do with it. He was on a business trip to Chicago when the murders took place.
What's going on, YouTube? This is As Seen by Dave. Today we're going to be talking about the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman.
Police are not confirming reports, published reports, that they found incriminating evidence here at O.J. Simpson's home in suburban Brentwood. Reportedly, a bloodied glove that matches a similar glove found at the crime scene only a few blocks away. Police do say that they have removed a considerable amount of evidence from the house here, including a pair of O.J.'s tennis shoes and a Ford Bronco.
So on the fateful day of June 12, 1994 is when Nicole Brown Simpson, the ex-wife of NFL and college football star O.J. Simpson, was murdered, and her friend Ron Goldman. Now, Ron Goldman and her were not in a relationship like some had thought, maybe like O.J. had thought, but they were friends. He worked at a local restaurant in Brentwood where she occasionally would go to. So June 12th, 1994, O.J. Simpson's and Nicole Brown Simpson's oldest daughter, Sydney, was having a dance recital at her middle school, which is located just across the street here. After the recital, O.J. Simpson went home. Nicole Brown Simpson went out to eat with her mom and her two kids, Sydney and Justin, in Brentwood. And then they stopped and got Nicole Brown Simpson, that is, and her two kids stopped, got some Ben & Jerry's ice cream, went back to her condo in Brentwood, and that's where she was ultimately murdered. So here in LA, the Pacific Palisades area, Brentwood, I think it's Pacific Palisades if I'm not mistaken, it might be Brentwood. This is Paul Revere Middle School. I'm not certain, but this looks like it could be the building here, where maybe the gymnasium, maybe the auditorium where Sydney would have had her dance recital on June 12th, 1994. O.J. Simpson was said to have sat behind Nicole Brown Simpson, and he was not thrilled about what she was wearing to this recital. What we do know for sure is that he was abusive. He was controlling. There were over 60 incidents. There were over 60 incidents of abuse throughout the relationship between Nicole Brown Simpson and O.J. Simpson. When she was 18 years old and he was 30, they met in 1977. He was still married to his first wife. And when they met, she was a waitress. They ended up getting married, were married for a few years. They had two kids, Sydney and Justin. There was a prenuptial agreement where she could not work while they were married, so she was a homemaker. But there were over 60 instances. 8 or 9 times the LAPD were called to the residence on Rockingham for the abuse. One time, O.J. had broken Nicole's arm. When the cops showed up, she said that she had fallen off of her bike, and that's how she broke her arm. She did have a safe that pictures ultimately showing the abuse that she received from the hands of O.J. Simpson in case one day she was murdered by him, because she ultimately thought he was going to do something crazy. Now we'll be taking you to Nicole Brown Simpson's home, where her and Ron Goldman's body were found out front. The address has changed, and I'll be taking you to Ron Goldman's place of work, the restaurant where Nicole Brown Simpson ate her last meal with her kids and mom, and Ron Goldman's apartment. And then ultimately, I will be stopping by O.J. Simpson's home, because I'm going to give you my opinion here, but I do believe O.J. Simpson, the evidence shows that he was the murderer. Now, he did get off. He was found not guilty. His defense team, the Dream Team, Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, Robert Kardashian, and multiple other lawyers, all were known as the Dream Team, and they had a great defense. There was some mishandlings by the LAPD. There was racism. Mark Furman, one of the detectives, not the lead detective, but one of the detectives, was there was a recording of him saying the N-word multiple times. But a lot of the evidence showed O.J. Simpson as being the murderer. So before we get too far into the story, I do want to talk a little bit about Ron Goldman, because I feel like he's sometimes the forgotten victim here because of who Nicole Brown Simpson was. She was the ex-wife of O.J. Simpson. Ron Goldman was 25 years old. He was born in 1968. He was born in Chicago, Illinois. Him and his family, his dad and sister and him, his younger sister, Kim Goldman, moved out here to L.A. When Ron was around, I think, 6 years old, his mom left the family. His sister Kim said that she would come in and out of their lives. So it was just the three of them. It was Ron's dad, Fred Goldman, and his younger sister Kim Goldman. But the three of them were really close. They developed a bond. When Ron and Kim were younger, they were in a really bad car accident, and Ron had pulled Kim Goldman out of the car. She actually almost was killed in that car accident. That's how bad of a car accident that was. But I just wanted to note that I feel like Ron is sometimes the forgotten victim, not as high profile. But Ron was 25 years old. He was working at the Mezzaluna restaurant. He had befriended Nicole Brown Simpson. He was an aspiring actor. He worked at various places. He was a promoter at the, he was a part-time promoter. He wanted to learn the ins and outs of the restaurant business because he eventually wanted to open up his own restaurant and bar one day. From all accounts, he just sounded like a nice young man. And as you'll find out, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. This building, this black building, was not black at the time. Looks like they have painted it over the years, but almost 26 years ago, no, I'm sorry, I can't do math apparently. Almost 31 years ago, this is late May 2025, almost 31 years ago, Nicole Brown Simpson and her two children ate her last meal, I assume her last meal besides the Ben & Jerry's that they grabbed afterwards. But this is where Nicole Brown Simpson had her last meal after the dance recital for her oldest daughter, Sydney. And where Ron Goldman was a waiter. Now, Ron Goldman was, he lived here in Brentwood. He was a waiter. He was a part-time model. He modeled sometimes. He was also a recruiter. But that was where the restaurant was. Like I said, it closed in 1997. I'm assuming due to some backlash from the bad publicity it received after the murders. So here's the building a little closer up, and then just down that way, South Bundy, where Nicole Brown Simpson, where her condo was, where she was murdered, where her and Ron Goldman were murdered.
Here's what's gonna happen.
And right here at 11663 is where Ron Goldman lived. So this is where he would come right after his shift. Mezzaluna, which is right down the street there. Just kind of go over where that truck is, past the light. There's a couple lights. And you could have probably just walked home. Investigators think he came home, ate a salad, got ready, and then left and went to Nicole Brown Simpson's house and to return those glasses. So this was the apartment that Ron Goldman lived in here in Brentwood. Coming up on formerly known as 875 South Bundy Drive, but the address has been changed to 879 South Bundy Drive, and this is where Nicole Brown Simpson's and Ron Goldman's body was found. So Nicole Brown Simpson, after divorcing O.J. Simpson, had moved to another home where she lived with her friend Cato Kalin, and when she moved from there to here in Brentwood, Cato Kalin had nowhere to stay in this home. She did offer a bedroom to him, but O.J. Simpson offered one of his guests a room in one of his guest house, Rockingham, for him to stay at. So Cato Kalin was stayed with O.J. Simpson there at Rockingham, and he was a house guest there. Around 10:15 p.m., one of Nicole Brown Simpson's neighbors, who is a dog walker, had heard a dog barking, and it actually at one of the street corners found Nicole Brown Simpson's Akita dog, which was named Cato after Cato Kalin. She let Sydney and Justin name him, and they named the dog after Cato Kalin. They had found Cato, the Akita dog, on one of the street corners, and the paws were all bloody. Other neighbors had let the dog take them back, lead them back to where the dog was from, and came back here to 875 South Bundy, and that's when the bodies were that's when Nicole Brown Simpson's body was discovered. Now, Ron Goldman's body was found up against a tree. The defensive wounds were minimal, which they think the struggle was quick. Looks like he was put in a headlock and stabbed multiple times, and that's how he ultimately succumbed to his injury. They do believe Ron Goldman had shown up when Nicole Brown Simpson was being murdered, because neighbors recall hearing a male's voice yell out, "Hey, hey, hey." So they do think that was Ron Goldman yelling out, saying at the assailant, at the killer. And Fred Goldman, his dad, said that sounds like something that Ron would have done, because he was that type of person where he was helpful and can see him trying to be out, trying to help in the situation after he was just dropping off Nicole Brown Simpson's mother's glasses that were left at the restaurant he worked at. So as you can see, the new owners, whoever the new owners are, really let foliage and things grow. I'm sure they have had a lot of people like me come view this place. So you can't really see the front of the condo anymore, but that is the gate that was in so many photographs and so many videos of the body being taken out and the blood on the bricks of Nicole Brown Simpson. And I think Ron Goldman was kind of inside the gate over off to a tree, because they did not find his body at first. And this guy's gonna stand here because, oh, he's getting a picture too. Sweet. Because, 31 years ago today. So I'm not the only looky-loo. I just gave him a thumbs up. I don't know if he cares, but not the only looky-loo. I did not mean to come here on the anniversary. On that fateful night. And so O.J. Simpson, after, okay, let me fix that. The killer, as Kim Goldman would say, the killer. So I don't know if the killer was parked, which way they were facing, but up towards that way, San Vicente. And that's where the witness had seen the white Bronco kind of go up Bundy. And on the San Vicente, there's a much more main street. Had seen him go on the wrong side of the road, and she called 911 and claimed she had seen O.J. Simpson almost hit her and almost hit a couple other cars and yelled profanities at her. And she said she recognized O.J. Simpson because she had just seen Naked Gun 33 and a quarter or 33 and a half, whatever the name of that movie is, but she had recognized O.J. So just inside this gate is where they found the body of Nicole Brown Simpson, and up against a tree is where they found Ron Goldman. So Nicole Brown Simpson was the first body they discovered. She had multiple defensive wounds in her hands. She'd been stabbed multiple times. Her head was almost decapitated from her body because of the severity of the wound when her neck was sliced. Now, months prior, O.J. Simpson had shot a pilot for a new show where he played an ex-Navy SEAL, and he learned how to use a knife in that pilot, and he was being trained how to use the knife. And he actually had one of the characters in a headlock and had a knife to the neck of that person. Now that might just be coincidence, but he did. It was just an eerie thing to find out. So this is the backside of Nicole Brown Simpson's condo. Now I wanted to show you this gate because in the front of the house on the other side is where Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were murdered. And then the killer, because there was footsteps leading out to this back gate by the garage here to the left of the garage, there was footsteps. There were bloody footsteps along with blood. What looked like there was a cut on the hand of the killer, because a third person's blood from the DNA evidence was found next to the bloody footprints, and the killer came out this gate and then left. So here's 879, formerly 875. So that was the gate that the killer would have come out of, and this was Nicole Brown Simpson's condo. Now, crazy thing is, another piece of evidence, O.J. Simpson had a cut on his hand, on one of his fingers, on his left hand, that is, just like the blood that was found here at the scene. And he had multiple stories of how he got that cut on his hand. Now, O.J. had a planned trip to go to Chicago, and that's where he said he had cut his hand because he was so upset after receiving the call about Nicole Brown Simpson that he had shattered a glass. But then he also changed his story that he doesn't remember how he cut his finger, or he plays golf and he cut his finger. But the top 5 injuries from golf does not include cutting your finger. Usually it's the bad back, it's, your feet hurting, things like that. I'll try and list the top 5 injuries from playing golf. I'm not a golfer, so I golfed as a kid, but I can't say for certain. But I don't think you would be cutting your fingers or your hand all the time while playing golf. It just doesn't make sense. So again, 31 years ago tonight is where the killer came out of that gate from Nicole Brown Simpson's condo after murdering Ron Goldman at the age of 25, Nicole Brown Simpson. Now, this might sound like a lie, but I promise this is not a lie. I'm in town for a concert, but today is June 12th, 2025. So this is the afternoon. It's around 1:30 p.m. This is the afternoon, 31 years later after the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Something I just realized. I will be talking a little bit about my connection to this case. Now, my grandma went to her deathbed believing O.J. Simpson was innocent. When I was a kid, she worked at a car wash. She was a car wash cashier. And during the trial, this was in 1994, they would have vendors, they would sell things there in the car wash, and she bought me and my sister a watch, an O.J. Simpson watch. I'm going to try and find an image and put it here. I no longer have the watch. I do know my sister has the watch. But it was an O.J. Simpson watch, and the second hands, there would be a police car chasing a Ford Bronco. Because days after the murder, the LAPD wanted to arrest O.J. Simpson, and O.J. Simpson agreed to turn himself in. He failed to turn himself in, so he was on a low-speed chase for an hour and a half to 2 hours, going through LA on 4 different freeways. And I say low speed because the speeds were around 35 to 40 miles an hour. He had his old teammate and friend driving him around in another Ford Bronco, not OJ's white Ford Bronco, but his buddy had a white Ford Bronco, and there was a police chase going on. 95 million people watched this police chase of O.J. Simpson being chased by the LAPD across Los Angeles. It was during the NBA Finals, Game 5, I believe, of that year. Multiple NFL personalities were on the radio begging O.J. Simpson to stop. His old USC football coach got in touch with him and pleaded with him not to do anything silly because O.J. had a gun to his head in the Bronco, had suicide notes written. He was threatening to kill himself. That right there says to me that he was guilty. But nonetheless, after the police chase, he went back to his home here in Brentwood, and that's where he was ultimately arrested. Funny story, I was in therapy. Now, like I mentioned, it's June, so it's Men's Mental Health Month. So men, make sure you guys are taking your mental health seriously. There's nothing wrong with seeing therapists, being in therapy. There's way too many men out there that are ending their lives too soon. However, I was in therapy a couple years ago, and one of my therapists in his previous career was a helicopter news cameraman. And he actually worked for KCAL 9 News. He was one of the two that filmed the O.J. Simpson police chase. So a lot of the footage that you'll see of the police chase, he said he was hanging outside the helicopter, just strapped in by 1 or 2 straps, and he was hanging out there with the camera, just filming the whole thing out of the helicopter. And the footage on CNN is from his feed. So, cool little side note there. Now, O.J. Simpson was acquitted. The trial lasted from January to October 1995. The LAPD and the prosecution team fumbled a lot of things because there was a witness that wasn't used that saw O.J. Simpson fleeing from the scene of the night of June 12th, 1994. But she sold her story to hard copy, so Marsha Clark, the lead prosecutor, felt like she was not a good witness. And LAPD, when they had the blood from the scene of the crime of the killer, did not take it straight to the police department like protocol. They actually had that on them when they went to go visit O.J. Simpson's home here in Brentwood. Now this is 360 Rockingham in Brentwood. This is the former home of O.J. Simpson. The home was sold and demolished. The home was demolished in 1998. So the home that stands here is not the same home that O.J. Simpson lived in and Nicole Brown Simpson lived in with him. But this is the home that he had. I'm going to choose my words carefully. If he's the killer, this is where he would have drove back to after the killings. 360 Rockingham and Brentwood. This was the gate. Now, it's changed some over the years, over the past 31 years. But this is the gate. Now, the gate where the limo would have been around the corner here, which I'll get to a little closer. His Ford Bronco was parked in front. There was a blood trail leading from the Ford Bronco. There was blood on the door handle, or there was blood right above the door handle on the driver's side door of his white Ford Bronco. Not the same white Ford Bronco that he was being chased in a couple days later when he failed to turn himself in. Not a high-speed chase, low-speed chase, 35 miles an hour. Watched by 95 million people. But there was a blood trail. The guest house is where Kato Kalin was living. Now, I have been to this house before. During the trial, my grandma was a bit obsessed with the trial, so she took me down here and we drove by this house and by the school. I don't believe we went by Nicole Brown's house, but we did drive by this. So I did see this house as a kid when it was before it had been demolished, obviously, because it was during the trial. We drove by. I was 6 or 7. I remember going on the trip with her and driving by, but I don't remember the house or anything of specific details. But side story, my grandma went to her grave believing O.J. Simpson was innocent. She was one of the ones that believed he was innocent, even to her last dying breath. She would debate people about it. I don't know if she didn't pay attention to all the facts. I love my grandma. She was one of my best friends. And when she passed away when I was at the age of 15, she still believed that he was innocent, which was pretty interesting. But yeah, this is where he was questioned. He was picked up the night of the murder by the limo. I'm assuming it's this driveway right here that you see here, this driveway. I'm assuming that's where he was picked up from the limo, taken to LAX, was shipped to Chicago, and eventually where he was picked up for questioning. When he returned from Chicago, the police were here, and there's a lot of news footage of that. And then also after the police chase, this is where he was arrested for the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Now, there were plenty of other times where police had been called to the residence. Mark Furman, actually 9 or so years prior to the murders, he was called here for domestic abuse. And Nicole Brown Simpson was sitting in her Mercedes-Benz, I think she had at the time. She was sitting in her car crying. O.J. Simpson had a baseball bat and her window was broken in. They had an altercation. Police were called. No arrests were made. She didn't want to press any charges. But just one of the times of mental/physical abuse. Nicole Brown Simpson from O.J. Simpson. He just seemed like he had a anger, jealousy issue that went untreated, and ultimately, he got off not guilty. I think he was guilty of these murders. If he didn't personally kill them, which I'm pretty sure he did based on all the evidence, if he didn't, his plan was to kill her. Now, his plan was not to kill Ron Goldman, but Ron Goldman was wrong place, wrong time, and that's why he ultimately killed as well. Just too much evidence. All the blood, his blood being with theirs, the blood at the crime scene, the shoes, the bloody shoe prints that were found that matched shoes that he owned even though he says he didn't own he never would have wore those ugly ass shoes in his quoting him, but Denise Brown said she had bought those shoes for him, and there is a picture even in the civil case showing that he had worn those shoes in that picture. After the criminal case where O.J. Simpson was found not guilty, the Brown and Goldman family did take him to civil trial, and they were awarded $33.5 million, which O.J. Simpson never paid a dime for. At the time of his death, with interest in the no payment penalties, he owed them over $100 million. So now I'm in Westlake Village, the Pierce Brothers Cemetery, Westlake Village, visiting Ron Goldman. So here's the entrance to the cemetery. You come in, you can make your first left here. He's in this little area here. There's a big tree here. He's just up yonder, I believe. Should be somewhere over here. I think I spot him. It says Ronald, actually it says loving son, brother, and friend, Ronald Lyle Goldman, July 2nd, 1968 to June 12th, 1984. This little inscription over here says, sometimes when we're alone and lost in thought and all the world seems far away, you come to us as if in a dream, gently taking our hands, filling our hearts with the warmth of your presence. And we smile knowing that although we cannot be together for now, you're always close in our thoughts. Missing you now, loving you always. So the grave of Ron Goldman, the acquaintance, friend of Nicole Brown Simpson. This is the wrong place at the wrong time. The night of June 12th, 1994, when he was brutally murdered by the killer. The age of 25 weeks away from his 26th birthday. He was killed on June 12th. Obviously, he would have turned 26 on July 2nd, 1994. So young, so much life ahead of him. Rest in peace, Ron. I know your family and friends miss you. Your sister misses you. Your dad misses you. Taken from this life. Taken from this world way too soon. While visiting Ron Goldman, I noticed this tree that is right by him. I saw some roots growing up and out of the ground over here, but you can see these roots are just doing a number on these graves. See if I can get a good view of this. But the root is coming right up out of the ground. I don't know if you could see it. I think you could see it here on the video here, but this headstone is literally curved as that root just continues to grow and curve some of these headstones. Just interesting how nature and the tree's root, I don't care where they're growing into, they'll just keep growing. I mean, look at this one. This one is pushed down a little bit from all the roots. Like I said, the roots are just coming out of the ground because this tree is just so massive. I see a root even way over there. This tree is humongous.
You paint the morning sky each day to catch my eye, and you do it over and over again. You carve the canyons deep Each night while I sleep, you do it over.
Behind this building, this mausoleum, if you will, the entrance is over here. You kind of drive in. Nicole Brown Simpson and her parents are on the back side here. Walking up. It's a very peaceful cemetery. Got some new development around, or some newer development. It might have been here. Playing in the clouds. Clear, beautiful day here in June, Southern California. Here she rests. It says, always in our hearts. Nicole Brown Simpson, 1959 to 1994. Like I said, her father, Louis H. Brown Jr., better known as Lou, and Judith Brown. Her father passed in 2014 and her mom passed in 2020. So the father outlived his daughter by 20 years. Nicole Brown Simpson. Rest in peace, Nicole Brown Simpson. Taken at the age of 35 by, in my opinion, her ex-husband. Her very jealous ex-husband, O.J. Simpson. Now there might be a lot of debate on if he was the killer. But based on evidence in his past history of abuse with her, it seems like he was the killer. So rest in peace, Nicole. I hope your kids visit you every once in a while. I know this is a high-profile case. Hope you learned maybe one or two things that maybe you didn't know. Maybe you knew all these facts. I did try to convey some of this. I didn't want my opinion to be involved, but honestly, I felt like out of respect for the victims and the victims' families, I believe the evidence shows who the killer is. So who do you think the killer is? Do you think the killer's still out there? O.J. Simpson did write a book about if he was the murderer, how it would have gone down. I don't think an innocent man wrote that book. He also mentioned that he would spend the rest of his life trying to find the murderer, trying to find Nicole's murderer. And I remember after him saying that, he was out on the golf field. He was out on the golf course. Now, I'm not saying he shouldn't have lived his life if he was in fact not the murderer, but he was not searching for the murderer. And then some years later, 2007-ish, he was arrested in Las Vegas for trying to take back some of his memorabilia. He said that some of the memorabilia that somebody had was his. I believe it was his agent that had sold some of the memorabilia. So he goes into a hotel room with some of his friends, and one of his friends had a pistol or a gun on him, and they were arrested for trying to steal back or trying to take back his memorabilia. And there's a recording out there of O.J. Simpson threatening somebody. So he did a number of years. He was sentenced to 33 years, but he got out on parole after a number of years, and then he eventually passed away in Las Vegas in 2021 or 2022, maybe 2023, even maybe 2024. I don't recall, but I remember when he passed. And in my opinion, he should have passed behind bars after the atrocious act that he committed to Nicole Brown Simpson, his ex-wife, the mother of his two youngest children, and an innocent bystander, Ron Goldman, at the age of 25, who was just coming by to return some eyeglasses that Nicole's mom had left at the restaurant that he worked at. He was a friend of Nicole Brown Simpson, but they were not in a relationship. But as we have come to find out after, through the court in the case, O.J. Simpson was a very jealous man. He threatened Nicole's life if he ever found her with another man. And many instances of abuse, physical and mental abuse, that O.J. committed to Nicole Brown Simpson. So I'll leave you on that note. Who do you think the murderer was? So, if you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys have enjoyed my other videos, make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to my channel. Watch my other videos that are out there. Until next time, as seen by Dave, out.